Hello, podcast listeners. This is your host with the most, JJ for JJ Meets World. You're going to love today's episode. Brenda Weiler is our guest today, and we're going to talk about things like yoga, music, whether or not she had a family band growing up with all of her siblings. And Tucker and I delve into the closeness of playing cards with loved ones. All of this and so much more on today's episode of JJ Meets World. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. This episode of JJ Meets World is brought to you by Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. Natalie has a proven track record to get your home sold faster and for more money. She is consistently focused on her clients' needs and wants throughout the entire process and make sure that they are well taken care of. If you're looking to buy or sell, reach out to Natalie today. On average, Natalie sells a home every 3.74 days. That's at least 2 a week. And last year, Natalie earned her clients on average over $4,000 above list price on their homes. And you don't have to take our word for it. Here's some of the great reviews Natalie has received. I was overwhelmingly impressed with Natalie and all the Hatch team. She was very responsive and responded to all of the emails within an hour. She gave great advice and encouragement from the listing and pictures, the offer, and all the closing details. The marketing team knew exactly how to promote my property, and I was pleased by how soon and easily my property received an offer. I was actually dreading selling my condo, and Natalie did such an awesome job that I felt like I really didn't need to do anything. The thing I most appreciated was that she really listened to what I wanted to do and respected my decisions. I would definitely recommend Natalie and all the Hatch Realty team. They made this process so wonderful. That was from Diane. So listen, if you're in the mood to buy or sell a home, give Natalie a call right now. You can reach her at 701-388-9338. Natalie, Natalie, at hatchrealtyfm.com, or you can go to livefargomorehead.com. That's livefargomorehead.com and find out some information. Huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring JJ Meets World.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
I love card games. It's something that I don't do quite enough, but I love playing cards. And one skill set that I never quite acquired was when you're shuffling cards, you can do kind of the fan back. So you do the first intermix, but then you fan it back. I've never been able to do that. And I have tried and tried and tried, but I just can't seem to get my hands to do that.
I'm right there with you. Both of my parents at one point in their lives dealt like blackjack and other card games, and they were just constantly playing card games. So they got really, really good at shuffling. And to this day, I'm ultra jealous of watching my parents shuffle cards. I just can't do it. I worked in poker television for like 6 years, played a ton of poker, and I still am just absolute garbage when it comes to card shuffling.
Would you say that every day your parents were shuffling?
I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I see what you mean.
Yep. Thanks for that pity throwback on a great joke. That was a great joke. So I wanted to just take kind of a brief moment here and talk about some of the card games that I've loved over the years, and something I discovered recently that has really been like a benefit to me, which is Bicycle, the card brand. So I think there's two major card brands, right? Hoyle and Bicycle.
Yep.
And the people who make Bicycle cards have an app out there that is not about playing card games on your phone. It's about learning the rules to 1,000 different card games. And so you can download the Bicycle app. It's called Learn to Play, and they will teach you how to play gin rummy. They'll teach you how to play canasta, how to play pinochle. And what's unique is it's meant to encourage you to play with other people. And in a time like now, I think knowing a couple of card games could be really beneficial to you and whoever you're spending time with, because you get to concentrate on one thing at a time. That's the thing I love about cards is you can't really watch TV and play cards. You can't really be chatting on your phone and playing cards.
You can try to, but then you're going to lose. Yeah, you're going to lose if you do all that.
You're also going to be the person who you're like, Jamie, put down that dang phone. And I think what I like about that is there is that connection. You are together, even like in Monopoly. So one person goes and then the other person kind of, if you're playing with 3 or 4 people, you wait until your turn is there and you're really not paying attention. You're not focused the whole time. But when you're playing Canasta, when you're playing Royal Rummy, you've got to be connected to that moment. And I really like it. One of my favorite card games is Cribbage. You ever play Cribbage? I've
never played.
Can you count to 15?
Most of the time, yes.
3/4 of the game is done for you then.
Okay.
It is a great game. I love Cribbage. In fact, one of the sweetest gifts that my wife ever got me was she got me a monogrammed Cribbage board.
Aw.
And I don't really tell her this enough, but it's one of those gifts that really touched my heart, because she knew enough about me and my love of Cribbage, even though she doesn't like to play card games with me because I'm quote unquote too competitive. But I thought, well, this is great because she understands something about me. And if people can take some time and play a card game, if you can pass down your knowledge of a card game to the next generation, I think that's really important. Both of my parents were avid card players, and they taught my sister how to play Canasta years ago. And my sister, I think, still at this point itches to play Canasta on a regular basis. And my sister is maybe the best card shark I've ever met in my entire life. And she knows that you don't just play the cards, you play the man.
Right.
And she'll do stuff like in Cribbage, there's a line called the skunk line, meaning that I beat you so bad you didn't even get past this point total. And so if we're playing Cribbage and, it's a heated competition, she'll start sniffing the air and intimidating me to make me make mistakes.
She's playing Cribbage like it's UFC.
Yeah, pretty much.
Smack talking as they come in.
I'm surprised that she doesn't have one of those old school poker visors to keep the light out of her eye.
Right.
So she can stay sharp.
All those years of working in poker TV, not once did I ever see someone wear a poker visor. Not
really?
Once. Not a single time. Now
Hollywood lied to me.
Well, I mean, yeah, for sure. A lot of poker scenes are nonsense in movies, but I think that's more of a product of its time. Me and some friends who are all poker players, we've been, because of the quarantine and we can't get together, poker is a very social game. We now just Venmo each other some money, and then we use a free funny money site to play private home games, which has been kind of fun. And there's a ton of ways to pass the time with card games, both with people in the room and across the internet. But I really, really miss just sitting at a card table with my friends and playing. You got sandwiches and drinks, and you're giving each other crap and being competitive over a card game.
People wear baseball caps when they're sitting at the poker table, right?
Yep. Although there are times where the room might not allow hats at all.
I was going to say, if there was a casino run by my grandmother, she would not allow that because hats were not allowed inside or at the table.
Right. So she was enforcing formal wear rules.
Yeah. So if Grandma Alice's casino and resort spa ever opened, there would be some hard, fast rules. Also, elbows on the poker table would be a no-go.
See, I'm picturing one of those
thank you during the deal.
I'm picturing one of those Montana casinos, where it's slot machines and then you can do your laundry right next to it. That's what I'm picturing.
I was once enticed into a Montana casino because they had a promise of a free candy bar. And sure enough, it had gummy worms and chocolate buttons. It was amazing.
Montana casino should be a term. Don't go in there. That place is a real Montana casino.
We could probably even use it about just parties in general. Tucker's birthday was a real Montana casino. God, I know what you mean, brother.
I was having fun, but this place sure turned into a Montana casino real quick.
Today's guest
let's see you transition from
Montana casino. I had a nice thing where it was about checking in with yourself and having time, and then we just blew right past that.
No, let's get back to that. Let's get back to that because that is actually incredibly important. It's the major theme of today's episode, and we do have someone who's has got a fantastic perspective on it. It was really nice listening to the two of you talk about this.
Brenda Weiler is our guest today, and Brenda comes from a background of things that are pretty much unknown to me, meaning that she has a passion for yoga and she is an accomplished musician. Two things that I don't think I can do, but I do make a pretty bold promise at the end of this episode. What I think you're going to enjoy from this is just the conversation of the importance of self-care and having that time to focus on the inside and outside of yourself. I really find this discussion to be wonderful, and I think it's timely, incredibly timely. Well, let's not make the people wait any longer. Let's get this podcast up and rolling, eh, Tucker?
Let's do it.
JJ Meets World.
Brenda, welcome to JJ Meets World. It's a real pleasure to have you on today. Let's start with this. Yoga, that's a pretty big part of your life. How did you decide to get into it?
Well, I was living in Minneapolis. I moved there shortly after I graduated high school here from Fargo. And my husband, well, he wasn't my husband at the time, but my partner, Derek, was, he was in dental school and I was doing my music at that time. And I think it started with him for my birthday. He got me a gift certificate to a yoga studio kind of in the neighborhood that I lived in St. Paul. And I dragged a friend of mine with me because I'd never done it before. So we tried it together and really had no idea what I was getting into. And it had ended up being an Iyengar studio. So that's like a specific tradition of yoga where there's a lot of props. There's, if it's a traditional studio, Iyengar, it has ropes on the walls. And so we used a lot of that stuff in the class that we took. And it was just a totally different experience. I mean, I think I was probably like, I don't know, 20 or 21 years old. And I definitely liked it. Like I was interested in it, but I didn't just like get into it hardcore right away. I kind of just slowly started implementing it over time. I was touring a lot at the time. And so I was kind of starting to do it on my own, just in hotel rooms, and like finally bought a mat and, carried that around with me everywhere. And then when we moved to Portland, Oregon, a few years later, or maybe a couple years later, then we lived near a studio, or it was actually more of a gym, and they did some yoga classes in one of the rooms at this gym. And I started going to one of those classes, and that was a traditional Ashtanga class. And I connected with the teacher pretty well, and we actually started becoming pretty good friends. And it kind of grew from there. Like we started taking his classes a lot, both my husband and I, and we just got very into it, and started practicing that at his studio because he had his own separate studio that was specific Ashtanga, traditional Mysore style. So we just kept going with that, and then it just has continued, I guess, ever since. I mean, my practice has evolved a lot over the years, but it's just kind of how it unfolded sort of slowly over a period of many, many years.
Did you have like a life plan before that, before you started into yoga? Did you think, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing as part of my life?
Well, no, because at the time I was a full-time touring musician. So that was my life. I mean, that was what I did and what I'd always done since I was 18. And so that was my main, and that was my income. That was my life. And yoga was just something I did to sort of stay healthy on the road, basically. And something that my husband and I could do together and that we both really liked and connected with. And so, no, it was like it was just a thing for myself, just a part of my personal wellness. And it kept me moving and healthy. And it just became, it really wasn't until, I started teaching a little bit in Portland as I was still doing music, and because my teacher needed a sub and gave me permission to teach. And that's kind of how it works in that lineage in Ashtanga, is you sort of pass it from teacher to student. And he said that he wanted me to try it, and that he felt like I was ready, and that I was willing and curious. So I started teaching there. And then when I moved back to Fargo with my husband, that was 12 years ago, I think, maybe 13 years this summer. And I was still doing my music. That was still my main thing. So I just kind of started dabbling in the teaching kind of on the side. And then it was a couple of years later that I opened my first space here in Fargo, my own studio. Yeah.
Do you draw any similarities between yoga and live performance, and especially with music?
Yeah, I do. Actually, I think it's there's sort of there's an experience that I had a lot when I was performing, and still do. If I perform now, I have these moments where it's like, I don't really know how to describe it other than it feels like you're completely present. You're not, you're completely in the moment, feeling what's right there. And
is it like a form of like a physical meditation, basically? Is that kind of like how you're describing it?
Yeah, it can be. It's just pure presence. It's like pure awareness, right. And like there's nothing distracting you. You're just completely in the moment. And I don't. It's very rare that people can feel that. That's kind of the idea, is that we can experience that more often than not. But for a lot of people, that's really challenging. But I did have that experience a lot when I would be performing. Not for a whole show. There were multiple times, even just within a show, where you just sort of zone out and you go on autopilot. Right. And you just play the song, and you'll like finish the song and forget. It's like when you're driving and you like, wait, how did I don't remember the last mile, right. You just kind of zone out. And that happens within a show or within a song. But there's also a lot of moments where it's the opposite. You're just completely in it and connecting with the audience and just feeling this like energy between you and them. And it's very similar in a lot of ways to what I've experienced in my yoga practice and meditation practice.
When you were talking about earlier the lineage, I thought that was really interesting, because that's a lot of martial arts get passed down in that same, from teacher to student, mm-hmm. And it's a real honor to be even included in that lineage. So mm-hmm. the lineage of this that you are connected to, how far back does it go? Do you know how wide the branches are?
In the Ashtanga tradition, the main teacher, sort of the guru, is Patabi Joyce, who lived in Mysore, India. He just passed away, maybe 8 years ago. I don't know the exact year, but 8 to 10 years ago, he passed away. And then his grandson has kind of taken over that tradition, or that, I don't know. It's kind of a business, in the end. Right. But he had learned Krishnamacharya goes back further to, maybe 150 years ago or something. And in India, and he taught a lot of people at that time, these practices. And Patabi Joyce was one, and he started the more Ashtanga tradition or practice. And then Iyengar was another one of his students, and he started the Iyengar tradition or practice, which that studio I mentioned, the first studio I ever went to, that was an Iyengar studio. So that was that lineage. And then there's a couple others that are kind of more major branches too, but those are the two that I've had sort of the most connection with. But Ashtanga was the main one. And yeah, that's it, back then. That's kind of how they did it, was they would pass it on, and you would have, a lot of time studying and practicing with him in Mysore. And over a period of time, there would be just sort of this verbal, or just this understanding basically of, you're ready to teach, go and teach,
JJ, that idea of like lineage skill passing down, that's a big thing in improv and comedy too, kind of, isn't it? Like
it really is, the idea that there are all these forms and that you can pick it up, but really learning from somebody who's done it for years and years. I think in any kind of mastery skill, you pass that down from generation to generation. And it's sort of what's the best way to put this? It's sort of it's a passing of the torch, hoping that it never extinguishes. Mm-hmm. So what Del Close in improv taught to the people like Amy Poehler, she turned around and taught to people, and it moves and it changes and it becomes a living thing that gets passed down, almost like if you've ever seen one of those 100-year cactuses where somebody says, my grandmother had this and gave it to my mother, who gave it to me. And I love when there's something that can be handed down as a skill set that future generations can appreciate previous generations for their work and dedication to it. Brenda, I want to take like a kind of a hard left here real quick. And would you tell me about your time in Pizazz, the show choir at Fargo South High?
Why?
Well, because I just happen to.
What do you mean? Why? Why not? Come on.
I happen to be a Fargo South High graduate as well, and I was recently chatting with Mary Radnicki, and she said, I listened to your podcast, and I'm like, oh well, here's some upcoming guests, and when I said your name, she lit up like a Christmas tree. So nice. You obviously made some kind of an impression on the Radnickis. Show choir in high school. Yeah. I think people have some fond memories of those times.
Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. I was only in it for 1 year. I didn't mean to say why, like, God, why would we talk about that? It was such a diversion. I was like, wait, Pizazz? Like, I haven't thought about that in a while. My sister was in it for, I think, 3 years. And like, she was really into it. I mean, she's got a little bit more kind of dramatic flair, I would say, than I do. Like, I'm a little bit more kind of quiet and introverted. And she's, especially in high school, was not that way. She was definitely a Pizazz type person. I was in it for a year because I wanted to do it with her. I mean, so she was a senior and I was a sophomore, and we had that year together. And then I quit because it just wasn't totally my thing. Like, it was a little bit out of my comfort zone, I would say, for my personality.
It is. I think like the thing about Pizazz is it is a crash course in what it means to be a full-time performer, because I think, I talk to people who've been in Pizazz and then they go and they're on Broadway and they're in touring musicals, and they said, yep, it's a lot more like Pizazz than you would imagine. You're doing the same show over and over and over again, but you got to give it the same energy every single time. And so you got that experience of what it's like to be in a award-winning show choir. Did you guys have to wear t-shirts with like starbursts and sun rays?
No. We had a costume. We had like the women had to wear, like, it was bright red, so we had a bright red, like, kind of silky flowing skirt, and then we had a sequined bright red top, and we had to wear heels, which even to this day I don't wear heels, so it was a struggle to move in them. But no, it was like full on, yeah. And the boys all wore tuxes. It was, God. Yeah.
I need to shout out to Mrs. Radnicki real quick, just because she was my music teacher through all elementary school. So she taught me and my class how to do the recorder.
Uh-huh.
And I think any person who works in public education who had to teach kids the recorder every single year deserves a medal. So
Yeah, I agree.
shout out to you, Mrs. Radnicki.
Yeah, I mean, I took choir with Radnicki for all of high school. And but I only did the Pizazz for a year, and it was super fun. It just, like I said, it didn't end up being totally like a good fit for my personality. Like what I did end up doing, which was being on stage by myself, writing and performing my songs, like that was a better fit for me.
I coach at Fargo North, their improv club. And recently I was lecturing them about talking during like a rehearsal. And immediately I felt like I had really channeled Mike Radnicki because he gave the best speeches about talking and disturbing and wasting time. And I used to remember thinking like, well, we're wasting more time listening to this giant speech, but okay, we'll just keep moving on, I guess.
Yeah.
And so you get that style of performance, but you decide you want to continue making music, continue performing music. So what's your musical style?
I mean, I would describe it, I guess. I always have described it as sort of folky, like folk pop or singer-songwriter type, you know. I mean, I've had some albums that are pretty stripped down, just more folky sounding, and then others that have full band and strings and stuff. So it's a little bit more fleshed out, sort of, some of them more pop sounding, I guess. But
so are you most comfortable with like a stool, a microphone, and a guitar?
Yeah, for sure. And that's how I performed for most of my time, 12 years or whatever when I did it. Most of my performances were like that, just me. I did some band stuff on occasion, but that was pretty rare. And yeah, that was just always my setup. I was always more comfortable on the stage than off the stage.
I think that there's nothing that terrifies me more than performing, specifically singing live in front of anybody, just because that's not a skill set that I have. I always tell people I've got so many wonderful qualities, but singing in front of people is not one of them. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of respect for people who can put themselves, previously, just a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about kind of that mental space that you get into when you're performing live on stage, because you've got a background in music and you know what it's like. Do you think it makes you appreciate it more when you go out somewhere and there's somebody who's at an open mic and, maybe the rest of the bar isn't really paying attention? Do you feel like you can at least be their champion and tune into it a little bit better?
I would say I try, but it can also be like sort of triggering for me because I've had just so many of those experiences that I remember how painful it was at times. So it can be kind of like, oh God, I got to get out of here. Like, I can't watch this. Like, it's too much. Like, I mean, just feeling a lot of empathy for the person, I think. But I'll definitely at times, there's often times where like I'm the only one clapping and I try and clap louder and I whoop, and because I know how much that can suck sometimes. When
I go see a bad improv show, I always try and smile as big as I can. Be like, okay, we all know this isn't going well for you guys right now, but I'm going to still be encouraging this whole time.
Yeah.
And I find that to be one of the most difficult things to do, just because, I kind of feel a little bit like I'm lying to them. But at the same time, like, I'd want someone to encourage me, right? Sometimes you're just not connecting with an audience, and you just need that little extra oomph.
Yeah.
Was music a part of your family? Like, had you been playing an instrument from an early age?
Yeah, I mean, I had 7 siblings, and we all played at different instruments. My dad was a doctor of music, and my mom was a singer too, and so we always had music playing, or we were playing it. we were all singers. Actually, like every one of my siblings has a really beautiful voice. And so like I have another sister who's a professional singer, and a brother who was in bands and recorded himself for many years. So yeah, it was just a big part of our life. I played piano growing up, and then played cello through high school. Then picked up guitar when I was probably a junior in high school and taught myself how to play that. And then now I also play the harmonium, which I use a lot in my classes, and I do like a song circle that I lead at my studio. So that's like an Indian instrument, and do a lot of chanting and stuff too. But yeah, it was always a big part of my life, and all my siblings are very musical, and I think music is one of the most important things for every one of us.
What's it like growing up with 7 siblings?
It's loud.
I was gonna say I have one sister, and I don't know how we found enough space in our house.
I can't imagine
man.
like a family with 7 siblings right now dealing with quarantine. I'd be like, nope, I'm going outside. I'm living outside, camping in the backyard.
Yeah, I know. My husband and I were talking about that the other day, because they had said, they had made the announcement of like, 10 or more, or even in a house, if there's a lot of people, like separate within the house. And I was like, what? That is not possible. And I started thinking of, what if this had happened to us? Like we grew up in a pretty big old house, kind of in the neighborhood I live in now, actually. But I mean, it had multiple rooms, and but we still had to share rooms, and we were, the common rooms or areas, we were just kind of piled on top of each other at times. And it was interesting. I mean, I had a really wonderful childhood. I always had playmates, and I always felt like supported and loved. And my childhood, I mean, looking back, I have a lot of memories of a lot of fun. And I think, there's challenges, of course. There's a lot of personality going on there. And we're all similar, but we're all very different too. And there's 4 boys and 4 girls. One of my sisters has passed away. But it's a very dynamic sort of like living organism.
I can kind of understand just a little bit, because my mom comes from a family of 9 kids. And so, and it's, they're all incredibly different people, but they do have this strong connection in that they're in this very exclusive club.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like
it's very tribal.
It's very, very tribal, and it's fun to watch them all get together at family reunions or just family get-togethers, and just see the 9 of them like at once, which is pretty cool. So I can kind of see what you're talking about. I have a little sister, a little brother, and a bunch of step siblings all over in age, and our lives were changing so much that we were never all just in one house at the same time. So it never felt like we were like one on top of each other. But to your point about always having playmates, that was the best part. Was that there was always something to do, because you were always surrounded by kids.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, as an adult, like and I'm number 7 of the 8. So I have one younger brother under me, like a year under me, and then all the rest are older siblings. So I have a different, I had quite a different experience, I think, than my older siblings did. But as adults, looking at all of us, like we're actually all of us, except for maybe a couple, are quite introverted. And I do think that's kind of a sort of a result of being in a big family like that, where you have so much stimulation and so much interaction, and it's kind of hard to get away from it. It's hard to find your own space and your quiet. And so as adults, like we kind of all gravitated more towards a quiet life. And I don't know if it's just a direct result of that, or if it would have happened regardless, but I'm definitely more that way. And my husband and I just had one child. And so her experience, it's really hard for me sometimes to relate to my daughter and what her experience is, because I had such a different childhood. Like having to like reach out and find people for play dates and keep her in relationship with other people it takes a lot of effort. And I never had that, like my parents didn't have to do that. It was all built in.
Yeah, it's
So
hard to say I'm bored when you have that many other siblings.
Right. I mean, that never happened. It was more of like, I think more of the conflict would be of like, I want space, and not being able to get space from people. So it's like the opposite problem. But they're both good and valid, and, there's nothing wrong with either one. It's just kind of how it played out. And, but it is very true. I feel like having siblings, it's like, they're just, I kind of think of it as like a cord, and I think of it a lot like at my belly. So like there's this cord that's connected from my belly to my sister's belly, and then that cord's connected to that brother, and that cord's to, and we're all connected like in a pretty intense way.
What did everyone play or sing in your family? I mean, did you have like a family band at one point?
We didn't have a family band. We all played, like the three younger kids, like my sister above me, 2 years above me, played violin. I played cello, and then my younger brother played viola. So we would do like trios, like string trios. And then the older kids, a lot of them played either reeds or brass, or, so I don't know if they did. I'm sure they did at times, but I mean, we never had like an official band, but we would do.
Are you both familiar with the one and only Genuine Original Family Band from?
I sure am.
From Disney, a classic Disney movie. JJ, when you first saw that movie, did you immediately get angry at your parents for not having had more kids?
You absolutely are correct, Tucker. In fact, this whole time I've been dying to ask the question based off of that movie. Be like, you have that many siblings and there's music in your family. You guys must have had a family band at one point.
Yeah. No, we didn't. We would always get the Von Trapp, reference of.
Right.
Oh, sure.
We would sing a lot together, but we never like nothing formal. I mean,
right.
My dad
I guess
would have probably
the Carter
thought that's
family too.
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't totally my dad's thing. Like, it's not his personality to be like, look at my children. And, that's very not my dad. So yeah, we just kind of all did our own things, and sometimes it came together into something, but yeah.
Did any of your siblings ever music a part of their life at all now? Like any of them touring or do an album?
Well, my sister's a professional classical singer, so she lives in New Mexico, and she's in a couple of professional choirs, and she tours a little bit with different groups, and does some recordings. And then I had a brother who did music for quite a few years and was in a few different bands, and did a couple recordings. So yeah, there's been a few of us. And then my younger brother has been a DJ for many years, and he's got just an amazing ear. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just, I would say it's probably one of the most important things in each of our lives is being connected to music, and just having that be a priority. And it's very much. Go ahead.
Does your husband perform as well?
No, he doesn't. He's he would chuckle if at that question. No, he's not a musician. He loves music. He actually does more of like discovering new music and listening to new music than I do at this point. He's a lover of music, and he's a big supporter of mine. So it's good.
Isn't it nice when you have someone who's close to you who has a different set of priorities when it comes to something that you love? So, for example, my wife has her film degree, and she loves movies, but the thought of being in front of a camera at any time is probably the most terrifying thing in the world to her.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, right now she's hiding because she does not want like even the sound of her voice to possibly be captured by a microphone.
She's afraid it's going to catch her.
Yep, she's afraid it's going to grab her. And so, but she's such a great proponent of everything that I do, and she can give me great feedback as part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what makes such a wonderful relationship in some time, and not that if you're two people who both love performing and both get the same joy out of it, that is just as good too. But it is nice to have that yin to a yang at times, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what has always made us work pretty well together. Because before I met my husband, which we've been together for 20 years now, but everyone else I had dated were musicians, specifically drummers. And that's not nothing against drummers. But
are you saying do not date drummers?
I'm just saying I shouldn't date drummers. So I did it multiple times in a row. And then I met my husband and it was like, oh, thank you.
What's like one bad quality that all drummers seem to carry?
No, I'm not going to say. It's just,
I think it's because they're drumming all the time.
Yeah,
a good drummer is
every
constantly, oh yes, just the worst.
No, I think it was just, it just works for us. Like my husband's actually a dentist, and I met him when he was in dental school in Minneapolis. And when I first met him, I never would have thought, I mean, like I said, the only people I dated were musicians up to that point. And I was like, what? Like, no way. And we just clicked like that. And it works well because we're so different. He's an only child. I come from a family of 8. He's like science brain. I'm like creative, like La La Land a lot of the times. And it just works. It's like we complement each other really well. And he keeps me really grounded and I keep him on his toes a little bit. Yeah.
Does one of you drink Coke and the other Pepsi?
No, we don't drink any soda.
You pretty much just pitched the idea for the show Dharma and Greg. So way to be ahead of the curve on that one.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hop back to yoga. As you can tell on JJ Meets World, we cover the whole map here. So I've done yoga once, and I was so self-conscious about how I looked and whether I was doing this right or not that I've kind of been afraid to try it again. You're
not talking about the time we did Pilates.
No. That was equally horrible.
Okay.
Yeah, I circle that date on my calendar every year to remember not to go outside. But do you find the threshold for yoga is so low these days because you can watch YouTube clips. There are classes everywhere for, from beginners to people who've been doing it for decades. Do you think that people who tried it and didn't like it, maybe they should give it a second shot because they need to find the particular style or teacher that fits for them?
Yes.
Good. Yep. Simple answer. I like it. How do you work with a first time student?
Well, I've changed my personal practice a lot over the years. Like what I was talking about earlier in the podcast was this Ashtanga tradition that my husband and I first began with. And we did that style for pretty consistently, pretty devotedly for over 10 years. That's a very rigorous and intense practice. It's very physically demanding and mentally can be really challenging as well. It's also very repetitive. It's the same sequence and set of poses every single time. And you build on it. There's different series of the practice that you can build on. But there's not that many people in the world that are doing, second or third series even. And there's more than that to go through. So it's a really physically challenging practice and not that accessible to a lot of different bodies. So I'm just saying that as a little bit of background because my practice has changed a lot. Like I became pregnant with my daughter 9 years ago, and obviously went through a lot of physical changes in that experience, which is normal and wonderful, but it changed my practice a lot. And I started teaching a lot of prenatal yoga to changing bodies and for women, and then did a lot more gentle restorative yoga and did trainings for that. And so my personal practice changed a lot. And then what I was teaching also changed a lot. I think that like what I'm doing now is much more beginner friendly. I struggled a lot teaching beginners in the Ashtanga tradition because it is such a hard practice. It's very much like it draws a lot of sort of type A people because it's can feel just intense, and people that are more type A or, more competitive sort of type, or like, people that want to just like do it right and do it now, and like that they like that kind of practice because it just fits very perfectly into their personality. What I do now is much more open, I think, for anybody. And it's especially beneficial to people who are type A, because I think they need more of that release and letting go of that rigidity. I would definitely say though, like try it again. I mean, if you've tried it once, obviously you didn't have or I don't know, it sounds like not maybe an amazing experience because you didn't do it again, but I would definitely give it another chance because there's a lot of different styles of yoga out there now, some of which are better than others, I think. But, I don't know. I was just thinking it's kind of like when you're trying to find a therapist and you might have a session or two with one and be like, this isn't really work. It's not jiving with this person, or our energies aren't working well together. So you try a different one and maybe think of it kind of that way. Like you got to try a few different kinds and a few different teachers. I mean, you want to find someone that you feel comfortable with, that you feel like you can trust, that makes you feel safe. That's really important. I wouldn't go after necessarily someone that's pushy or aggressive or makes you feel bad about yourself. Like that's not what the practice is about, in my opinion. And I think that's why a lot of people get turned off by it, is they get the wrong message of what yoga is.
So if you had to sum up yoga then as for what it is, what do you think, if someone is out there, who should be seeking out yoga other than just everyone?
Yeah, I was going to say everyone, but
Yep. Nope, I took that away from you.
I mean, I think especially anybody who is struggling in any way, like if they're struggling with some body pain issues or body image issues, not feeling good about their body, then trying yoga could be really great because it helps bring you into your body and helps you feel your body in a new way and helps you appreciate your body. If you're dealing with maybe some emotional issues, depression or anxiety, hopelessness, like it can really help with that stuff too, for similar reasons. It brings you into your body and helps you ground. There's just so much benefit. I think it's just hard to say like who specifically, because I do feel like everybody could benefit.
Well, and even right now, especially, would be a really good time to have a yoga skill set. Yoga seems to be like one of those things. Once you've gone through it a bit and you know some, I guess basic patterns or forms, and you can do some on your own, you can do that anywhere. I mean, you can do that in a hotel room. You can do that in your bedroom. You can do that in the backyard. You can do that at a park. And so it's something that, especially in this time when people are living in solitude, or not necessarily solitude, but quarantine or socially distanced, where there's a lot of people dealing with anxiety about the situation, and I'm sure a lot of depression that's going to follow that, and a lot of cooped up bodies that want to get up and move. And being able to do yoga is something that you could just do right now in your home. And I guess leading to this then, in much the same way as how now we are conducting this podcast via the internet because of COVID-19, have you been doing or been partaking in any sort of internet webcam based yoga sessions with anybody?
Yeah, so I officially closed the studio last Sunday because of everything happening, and it didn't feel good or right to keep it open and have people coming into a space together.
Good call. Good call.
So I closed that and I moved all my classes online. So I'm doing them all through Zoom, and people can register through my website, and then I send them a link right before class, and then we all come together. And I'm in the studio still, so it's like if they're students of mine and we've been there, it's a familiar space that they're seeing me in, and we're doing our practice. And some of it, like we just did a family yoga class right before this. My husband and daughter and I led a class, and we had a bunch of families join, and it was beautiful. I mean, and obviously we're doing like physical movement, like that's a part of the practice, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, I feel like the deeper meaning of the practice is to just connect with yourself and with others and with the wider world. And it's about deepening and like increasing our awareness and sending out compassion. So we didn't do it so much in the family class today, but in my other classes, we're doing a metta meditation. We start and end it every class with that, which is, may I be safe, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering, and may I be filled with loving kindness. And you repeat that to yourself over and over again. And then we end the class with, may all beings be safe, may all beings be happy, may all beings be free from suffering, and may all beings be filled with loving kindness. So you're sending out that metta, that loving kindness to everyone in the world. And there's a lot of suffering right now happening. So it's really powerful practice to do that, and especially to do it with other people, even if we are on our computers. We're still connected and we're still sending out that intention and energy. But even with like the family class this morning, like I had them start with drawing pictures. And well, first we started with drawing a word or a phrase and I said it as like, a feeling word or like an action word. So trying to get the little ones to put down what they're feeling right now. And then to just do some little colors and drawing around the word. So a lot of them were, my daughter did one that was lonely. And then the other one was, I think, happy. And then one did worried, nervous. And I had the parents do it too, because the parents need to also express what's happening for them. So there was a lot of like anxious, worried, confused, sad, lonely, but there was also happy. There were multiple parents that put grateful. There was a few that put connected, community. Like it was really beautiful. Like, so that's how we started the practice. Like it doesn't, a lot of people think of yoga and they're just like, oh, I'm not flexible. That's what everybody says. That's their first reaction. It's like, what does that have to do with it?
Right.
That doesn't matter. It really doesn't. That's not what this is about. I mean, asana is part of the practice, and it can be part, but that's not everything. That's just a small part of it. So I guess I would say all of that. I don't know.
I think that's a great way to sum up kind of the need that people have for filling this hole in their everyday lives. One thing that I appreciate so much, so my wife does yoga every morning, and one of the things that I'm a little jealous of her for is it's a time for her to just connect one-on-one with herself. So there's no cell phone, there's no, oh, I need to go do this right now. You're concentrating on your breathing, you're concentrating on, your space just right there. And it is a very calming thing. It's something that I think people used to do a lot more of, that because of the conveniences of the 21st century, we've lost that ability. I especially think during this period where people are quarantining during the COVID-19 outbreak, we're going to realize that we we are missing a skill set that our grandparents used to use a lot, which is just being quiet and having to use your own thought process and not to let your thoughts race from one thing to the next to the next to the next, but to think about where you are, who you are, what you're doing. And I mean, I think that there's some good that can come out of this situation. And one of those things might be people realize that they need more of that in their lives. And it's time to take on something like yoga. Now, again, let me kind of steer this a little bit to something Tucker mentioned earlier. What is the difference between Pilates and yoga?
Well, Pilates is a whole different. I mean, I actually honestly haven't done really much Pilates. But Pilates is an exercise program that's very core based, so it's a lot of building up strength in the core. But it's, there's lots of different sequences and exercises, and they use the machine. They don't have to. A lot of it can be just on a mat, but then there's also the blanking on the name. But they use the machines too, where you can have that support. I mean, yoga is different in that it's been around for like thousands of years, these practices. I don't know Pilates history very well, I guess.
Is it safe to say that yoga is like yoga then maybe just more holistic in general? There's more of the body that it's dealing with versus Pilates is like, this is a specific set of instructions with the goal of with like a very narrow goal, which is strengthening this muscle group, versus in yoga, that goal set is much wider. There's a lot of other things that you're trying to accomplish at the same time.
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't, and maybe some others that are in the Pilates world might disagree. Like I said, I don't know that much about Pilates, but yoga to me is a spiritual practice as much as anything else. I don't know if Pilates practitioners would say that is also a spiritual practice. Maybe they do, but I mean, yoga is definitely historically. I mean, that's what it's a physical practice too. There's that part of it, but there's all kinds of other, limbs or parts to it that are not about strengthening the core or, it's a spiritual practice for me. So I think that would be maybe the biggest difference. Yeah.
What about, people who think that they need to gear up? So, I got to go out and I got to get a yoga mat. I got to get my yoga pants. I've got to get a special hair bow that I wear every time to tie back my hair in a certain way. And I got to invest in a DVD set, and I got to get the right water bottle. Do you sometimes tell people to pump the brakes a little bit?
Yeah, I don't see as much of that at my studio, like the gear fascination, I guess. No, none of that is necessary. I mean, a yoga mat is helpful because you don't want to be slipping around and sliding around and hurting yourself potentially. I mean, it does serve that purpose of helping stabilize, but you don't even need that, depending on how much physical stuff or asana you're actually going to do. I mean, if you're going to just start with a quiet breathing practice, you just need to sit. And you don't have to sit on the floor. You can sit on a chair. You could lie on your bed and do it. You can keep it really, really simple. And then, usually when people do it for a longer period of time, or they start to really establish a practice, then it is nice to have a few things. And I encourage people to set up a home space and an altar space, so it's similar to like a writer who always comes to their same desk and they have their same setup, and that's where they go to do their writing. It's kind of similar. It's like you step into your space and it's all set up, and that's what it's there for. And you can just kind of switch gears and go into your practice a lot easier than if one day you're doing it in the kitchen and the next day you're trying to do it in the corner of your bedroom. And then you know what I mean? There's quite a different feel to that. So I definitely encourage people to like set up their space, which inevitably then you might have a mat. Maybe you have a candle. Maybe you have a bolster or a blanket. Some people like to have a block. But but it's definitely not something you have to like go out and spend hundreds of dollars before you even start. I mean, just start super simple.
What about all the different variations on yoga? So like hot yoga, laughing yoga. I know that there's a heavy metal one. There's one that breweries do where you can have like drink a beer afterwards. I mean, is it kind of neat to see all these different variations of yoga out there?
Yeah, I think that, it's been an interesting thing to observe over the years because I started, like I said, with Ashtanga, which is pretty traditional, not a lot of like wiggle room. Like you just do this and you do it the same way every time. So when it started to sort of shift and it became quite, pretty big, pretty fast. And then a lot of people started sort of developing their own styles of yoga. And it's all really coming from the same place, but people are just sort of morphing it into their own brand. I mean, I do have sort of some issues with that, like copywriting a sequence like Bikram did. Like that doesn't feel good to me. That's pretty icky. But some of it is sort of inevitable in a capitalist society, People are going to take it and make it different and make it work for them and make money off of it. But some of them, I mean, some of the styles and some of the teachers out there are really, really amazing. So I think, like I said, finding one that just resonates with you and that feels really authentic and true to what you need or want to manifest for yourself. Like there are lots of options for sure now. I mean, we do like gentle restorative yoga. I do prenatal yoga. I do yin yoga, and then vinyasa style, which is more Ashtanga kind of based, but I'm not doing the traditional Ashtanga sequence. I'm just doing sort of a flow practice. We also do, one of my teachers does laughter yoga, actually. We're sort of on a break right now because of what's happening. Because that's definitely something you want to do in person. And now is not the time to be opening your mouth laughing in front of other people,
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So you have to, but I had never done it before and I was actually quite cynical about it. And then one of my teachers got trained in it and she was like, let's just try this. I'm really excited about it. And then I did a few classes with her and it was freaking hilarious. Like I was laughing so hard. And by the end of the class, I was crying, not like crying, like laughing so hard I was crying. It was like I had laughed so much that by the time we got to the end of the class, I was literally just crying, like
it was the only emotion like that was left to you at that point, basically.
It was like it broke this dam and it let it all out. It was crazy. I'd never experienced anything like it. So after that, I was like, yeah, I get this. I get why this is so therapeutic. And I think other people should experience it.
A lot of actors actually use similar techniques to that when they're exploring emotion ranges. Is they'll do something kind of like that where you're basically just you're leaning hard into doing one particular thing, and it can kind of cascade you to a point, and then you reach somewhere you didn't realize you get to. But I guess it makes sense to me. Our emotions are things that happen to us in a physical body. And so if you make the physical body go through a particular set of emotions over time, you're going to trigger an emotional response, almost guaranteed at some point. So yeah, it makes sense to me that would put you through that emotion set.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild. And I mean, some of the other ones that you mentioned, it's, I think that if it works for people, like if it gives them access to the practice, especially initially, I don't have a problem with it. I'm not totally it's not always something that I'm interested in doing. Because I feel like sometimes it's sort of walking this fine line of like just adding all these bells and whistles to something that doesn't need to be added to. Just do it. Just do the practices. But I think because of just our culture, it's like we have to have all this stuff added on top just to entice people to try it.
Just the new spin on it.
Yeah, because we're so distracted and we're so like overstimulated that we need all this crap to convince us. And but like I said, if it actually is able to entice someone and brings them into it and they get something out of it that's real, then fine. If that worked for them, then do it. But I think, keeping in view though, like what the practice is for, it's
Right.
not so we can drink more, like that's not really where I think the goal is. Yeah.
So let me ask you about this. So you took a passion and you turned it into your livelihood. What's it like to be a small business owner where your business can be focused on wellness?
Well, I feel really lucky. I mean, it's a pretty, it's similar to, in some ways, to when I did my music full time. It's like, it's all, to me, it feels like it's just all about connecting with people. And now I'm just connecting with them through movement and, directing them through breathing or sitting or relaxation instead of, well, actually, I do sing a lot in my classes too. So I'm still connecting through music, and that's really powerful. I guess I just feel grateful that I have that opportunity to do that.
Self-care has become a term that we're using a lot more these days. It's way more common than I feel it's ever been before. Do you feel like we're at a place where more and more people are understanding what that means and taking actions to live their lives in a self-care manner?
I think more people are aware of the importance of it than ever before. And I think the more we talk about it, I think the better. We have like skyrocketing rates of depression and anxiety in this country, not only for adults, but for kids. I mean, those statistics are pretty scary. And so I think as adults and as parents, like we need to model to our kids what it means to actually care for oneself, and not in a really, like in a serious way, like really being thoughtful and being like showing them day in, day out. What does that mean? It's not once a week or once a month doing a yoga practice. That's not enough. Like we have to show them day in, day out what it means to stay balanced. And that, I think that will help our kids more than anything. I don't know. I've been thinking about it a lot just this week, especially as everything has kind of just escalated with this coronavirus. It's like trying to see this as like an opening for possibility for all of us. Like we have to slow down. We have to look at each other and talk with each other and see each other more, because we weren't doing that before. And I think it's not going to happen in a week. I mean, but this is like, as scary as it is, if we could see this as a possibilities, or see the possibility in this, I think it could be really powerful. Like just spending time together right now, like with your kids or with your spouse, and it's going to be challenging because people aren't used to spending this much time together, like families.
Right.
Because we're running in 1,000 directions all the time. And a lot of it is not our fault. I think it's just the way our culture has evolved. But some of it is, our choices. And I think this is an opportunity to like really pull back and look at our lives.
Brenda, I can't think of a better way to end this podcast. And gosh, I thank you so much for your time. This has been eye-opening, and I think it might actually get me back on a yoga mat. So thank you very much for that encouragement and that gift.
You heard it here first, folks.
Good. Yeah, I've done my job.
Yeah, if people stay tuned to the JJ Meets World Facebook page, maybe I'll even do a little live during one of these. And here's another question. So when the world rights itself again, how can people find your studio and take a class and maybe learn more?
So yeah, the website is ecceyoga.com. So it's ECCE yoga.com. And there's classes are listed there and teacher bios and my blog page. And like I said, we're doing as many classes as we can online during this time while people can't be together in person. So really encourage people. I mean, and actually that's the perfect time. I'm finding a lot of new people are registering for the online classes because there's the whole intimidation factor almost goes out the window because you're not in a group anymore. You're just in your home. Nobody's watching you. It doesn't matter what you wear. It doesn't matter if you've done your hair, like it doesn't matter. You just show up and you can turn the video off so nobody sees you. All you see is me and you hear my voice. And so it's a really great way for people that are new to try it because all of that other crap just doesn't exist. Yeah. And then I'm also doing like a song circle, which I mentioned earlier, but it's like a chanting group and I'm doing it live on Facebook. I did it last week and I'm going to do it tomorrow again too. So I play the harmonium and I sing and we do like traditional chanting and it's a way to come together in a different way.
A huge thanks to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty for sponsoring this podcast. Folks, if you're looking to buy or sell a home, contact Natalie Deutsch today because Natalie Deutsch is not only a previous podcast guest, she's somebody who's going to care enough to sell your property for top dollar. She's also going to find you the best price possible if you're purchasing a new home. Last year on average, Natalie earned her clients $4,000 over list price on their homes and sold them faster than the market average. On average, Natalie's selling a home every 3.74 days. That's 2 homes a week. Those numbers don't lie. Find out why Natalie is one of the top agents in this entire market. Get a hold of her today, Natalie at hatchrealtyfm.com. You can also call 701-388-9338 or go on to livefargomoorhead.com. That's livefargomoorhead.com. Read all of her amazing reviews, and then listen to her episode of JJ Meets World. Thanks again to Natalie Deutsch of Hatch Realty. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJ Meets World and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com, and you can find direct contact info for JJ. All right, I'm going to get into a yoga pose right now. Here we go. Tucker, I'm going to need some help.